wherever you are and however you are listening, thank you so much for being back with us on another episode of Winning the Moment. This is episode 53, and I have Nicole Younger. She is one of the owners of the brokerage group, The Local Experts. That's not really what we talk about. Today's story is so compelling that I don't even want to foreshadow it. So just listen to it, listen to the entire thing. It's a story unlike any I've ever heard, and I was just enthralled the entire time, and I know you'll be the same way. Be sure to like and subscribe. I know you're going to love this episode. Well, I'm ready if you are.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Thank you for the champagne.
Yeah, you're welcome. There's more, too. It's not very good champagne. I thought there was a cork. Turns out it's twist off, but my sister's got this for me when we bought out my partner in our company, and so that was the only champagne we had. Because I just recorded episode 52 with Megan, so you're episode 53, so I've been doing it for a year now.
Wow.
I know. Can you believe
That's
it?
awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's quite the journey. You know, it's a job that has no rewards for a very long time. You know, you just got to keep putting in the work and putting in the work. And I started it telling myself, if I can get to 4 years, then we'll see where I'm at. But before then, I can't really judge myself because it takes a long time to penetrate the market.
But you like it, right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah. As far as like enjoyment goes, that's awesome. Like, I mean, think about it. I'm connecting with 53 different people in a way that I would never otherwise connect with them. Like even knowing you, we met at a Halloween party, but it's not like we sat across the table for 60 minutes and talked. You know what I mean? And in real life, you don't often, in fact, you never connect with someone for 60 minutes uninterrupted.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because like in the course of your normal life, if you got a real estate call, you're going to grab it. And of course, as you should, or a text message or an email. And I wouldn't think anything of it. But in this moment, now we're going to spend 60 minutes together. And so I've met and had all these amazing conversations with people, you know? So it's like, I absolutely love it. I mean, I've been with Megan for 17 years. We just recorded episode 52. She uncovered something today that she had never said out loud in 17 years of being together because we sat here for 60 minutes, you know? So it's like, you never know what's going to come from it.
The big reveal for her. No wonder she didn't sleep so much last night.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm going to give him a little something.
So it's been pretty cool. For the listeners, we are already up and going. Today I am on episode 53, which is so cool. And I've got Nicole Younger with me, and she is one of the owners of the brokerage, The Local Experts, here in sunny St. George, Utah, with Callie Gray. And I am just so excited to have Nicole with me here today. I had the opportunity to meet you at a Halloween party. So Nicole really only knows me as my alter ego, Joe Speed, with my long, beautiful, luscious blonde mullet and my white tuxedo that I've turned into shorts. But Nicole, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So
those of you watching on YouTube see we have a little bit of champagne going. It is 5 o'clock actually, so totally acceptable. And you probably don't know this, Nicole, but today is my birthday.
Happy birthday!
Yeah.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So what a serendipitous thing. The episode 52 fell on today, and now I get to have you as a guest and learn your backstory. I'm super excited.
Okay. Well. Great. Let's see how excited you are afterwards.
Yeah. So let's jump into it. I love to get people's backstory, and for everyone that starts at different times in their life. So wherever it's appropriate for you, let's let the audience know, who is Nicole Younger.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. I'll touch on a little bit of each decade.
Let's do it.
All right. So I guess the first 10 years, I was born in Marysville, California. It's Northern California. And my mom and dad had my brother 5 years later. And by the time he was 6 or 5 and I was 10, they got a divorce. And
okay.
Yeah. So then my mom kind of just fell off the earth. And
oh, interesting. So it was your dad that.
Yeah. So my dad, I remember the day he came home and he said, well, your mom didn't show up for the custody battle, so you guys are all mine. And
did he say it like, was he disappointed that she didn't show up, or do you think he was happy that he got to have you guys all the time?
I think he was happy and also disappointed.
Yeah, because like she couldn't show up for her kids again.
Right.
And how old are you at this time?
So I was 10 and my brother was 5.
How was that for you, knowing like your mother just didn't care?
Yeah, I honestly have never really allowed myself to think like that because I think it would have been so devastating for
Sure.
me. So I just, went and played outside and,
Yeah.
just did what I had to do to stay happy.
Even in your adult life, have you ever revisited that?
Oh, yeah, it's changed over the years.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I was 10 and
Yeah.
I was still like not sure what he was, like I was taking it all in, but I wasn't really processing feelings.
Couldn't understand the whole picture.
Yes. And so, yes. So then we ended up moving from that house. It was probably a little bit too much for my dad. He sold the house, and I think it was like their first like house that they owned together.
Sure.
And we moved to Yuba City to a little duplex, and my dad worked for the water rec plant, and I started babysitting my brother, and we'd go to school and I'd watch him until my dad got home, and that was our life.
So you're totally in that parental role for your brother.
Yeah, it wasn't too hard. I mean, my dad would give me $25 a week and I'd go to the arcade on the weekends and spend every penny of it playing Miss Pac-Man.
I was going to ask, what was the game? I'm pretty good at Pac-Man.
And Centipede.
Yeah.
That's my other favorite.
I love those both.
Yeah. So I did that. And then, my mom would come around like once a year for just like a night and probably wreck my dad's heart. And then,
yeah.
My brother was so little, like for years after that, he never really saw the problem. And so, yeah, we just.
One at 5, he's just barely old enough to even remember her anyways in any real capacity. So he kind of only knew her in the capacity that she was, where she would just randomly show up, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. He sees things differently a little bit. We have conversations about this, and he thought he was 10. And I'm like, no, but Chris, I was in the 3rd grade. I was
interesting.
Like,
yeah.
That's how I kind of like figured out the timeline. And he was like, oh, and this is just recently. He's like, okay, you might be right.
Are you and your brother still close?
Yes. Well, we weren't close for a long time.
Okay.
So basically, my dad remarried when I was in the 5th grade.
So just a couple years later.
Mm-hmm. And when she came along, she was pretty jealous of my relationship with my dad. And
yeah, it's weird how that dynamic with stepmothers and daughters can be,
Yes.
Because like they're competing for his love too, even though they shouldn't be with a 10-year-old or 11-year-old, however old you were at the time.
Exactly. And she, she had some insecurities, and I was only able to like recognize this once I, worked a program and got rid of all of the animosity and resentments.
Yeah.
I could say, like, I feel for her. She
Sure.
has her own story. And
Right. You couldn't know that when you're 11.
No. Yeah, exactly. So, things happened, and we went to Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Donna, my stepmom, my dad, my brother, and then she had 2 kids. And so we were all
so
like
mixed family.
Yes. And we were all her daughter was Chris's age, and then her son David, and then me. So we were kind of close in age. And David, side note, when we were there, I got to be in a Huey Lewis in the News video.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, but we were there, and her son bit my brother, and I just hauled off and punched him. And that was it. We packed up the motorhome, and they sent me to my mom's. We went straight from Santa Cruz to Northern California and got in the car, and they took me to my mom's. And
Just you, or not your brother too?
my brother came along for the ride with Donna and my dad.
Yeah.
And they took me out to her house, and she was just like, we're done with you. Donna was saying, we're
Yeah.
done with you.
Yeah.
I can't handle you. And I'm sure I was a lot,
Yeah.
So she dropped me off, and my mom was like, what's going on? Right? I don't even go over there to spend the night.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's your problem now. And then my mom and Donna got into a fist fight.
No.
It was crazy.
Oh my God.
Yes. Comments flew, and my brother and I were just like,
Oh man, what a traumatizing thing for kids to see.
So she starts walking down the road, and my dad leaves and follows her, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to even remember if my brother was there or not, but I think he was. And he followed her down the road until she would get in the car. And then I didn't talk to my dad for like 3 years after that. He just
Oh, man.
he didn't pick up a phone, he didn't call. And we were only like 15 miles from each other. So
Oh, no way.
yeah.
So he could have easily still kept a relationship with you.
Yes. So I was that was hard because my mom was on her third husband then.
Well, and then basically neither of them want you.
Yeah, it felt it was
Yeah.
complete abandonment issues.
Oh, my
right?
gosh. I'm sorry. That's terrible.
Yeah, well, thank you. I've worked through it, so that's why I'm able to smile through the story.
Especially to take that as like a 10 or 11-year-old, like the only people in your life who are supposed to unconditionally love you no matter what are both like, no, yeah, we don't want her. That's just devastating.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard. And, I've even still to that day, just like when I found out they were getting a divorce, I never really let the emotions get to me. I never really acknowledged them. I didn't tell people like, woe is me. I didn't cry to my mom. I just kind of like picked up and said, here's where I'm at now. This is another start of whatever. And so.
And your mom was on her third husband, you said at the time?
Yes. So this one was Craig. He was a great man. His family grew rice and live oak, and he had a 3-wheeler, and I just loved that.
Yeah.
And we lived on some land, and I would just go ride that and have fun but that didn't last too long. And as awesome as he was, he was a drinker. They both were, and so I tried doing something normal, and I signed up for like the school softball.
Okay.
And he's in the stands going, let's go, douchebag. And like literally saying things that, everybody's laughing at me. And I'm thinking, I'm new to the area. And
Oh my
he's
God.
just,
Belligerent.
that's his humor.
Yeah.
And I would brush it off. Honestly, I kind of laughed about it. But looking back, I'm like, what would make him do that?
Terrible. Yeah. Right.
And so they ended up getting a divorce. Alcohol doesn't mix in relationships.
Sure.
And so my mom and I moved, and this is it only been about 6 months. So then we moved in town, and she was able to, she worked for Sears, Roebuck and Company forever. And
Sears what?
Sears, Roebuck.
Okay, got it. Just Sears.
Sears, yeah.
Yeah.
So she worked there, and she was able to get like a little house in town. And then she met her next future husband, and she went and lived with him. So then I continued to live in that house.
By yourself?
Yeah. So
Oh my God. How old were you?
Yeah. It was kind of bizarre. So I was
Nicole, you're blowing my mind
like
right now.
15-ish.
And you just lived by yourself?
16. Yes. And, she just up and went and stayed at Kenny's house, her boyfriend's. And I lived close enough to where I could walk to school. And at this point, I'm just like a freshman in high school. And so I'm able to walk to school. I had a boyfriend that I had met, and he'd sometimes pick me up. I mean, we went out for about 6 months, but yeah, I was doing just fine. I actually liked it. I liked it.
That makes sense.
Nothing changed except for I didn't have anybody that I didn't respect telling me what to do, because I was like, okay, I don't think you make very good decisions. I'm going to make them for myself. So yeah.
Did you finish high school like that then?
No, so I did not. Within like a year, not even a year, probably 9 months, I had a couple of people over. And back then that was just when, the phone was on the wall.
Yeah.
There was no cell phones. And I had a couple of people over, and it got out of hand very fast. And basically the police came, everybody went home, and I went to bed. And I didn't think anything of it. Okay, obviously that got out of hand. And a couple of days later, my mom showed up, and she said CPS had called her, and that she had to come either bring me to live with her, or she needed to live here, or I was going to go to, protective service.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So she's like, pack your stuff up. So then I moved to Yuba City, and I moved in with her and Kenny, which is her husband at this time, or soon to be. I think they had already gotten married. And I lived there for a very short time. I remember it was about not even maybe 9 months, and we just couldn't live together, right? She didn't know how to parent, and I didn't have a lot of respect for her, so
Sure.
I probably was mouthing off and hard for her to handle.
Right.
My 16th birthday came around, and like I just waited all day. I'm like, nobody's even said happy birthday to me. It's just like,
Wow.
So I so I was disappointed at that point. I started, recognizing things and like, this isn't how like normal people live. And when I was in Live Oak, I had established a friendship with a girl named Mindy. And so her parents took me in a lot and like would take me on their vacations. And so I got to do things, right? And they understood what was going on.
Right.
They could see.
Yeah.
And so I could see, like, that was my, like, experience of how a real family, like, operated.
Yeah.
So I learned really right around that time, like, you just need to look to other people that you respect and try to adopt some of those behaviors because you're not going to make it. Like, you're going to be dysfunctional if
What
you
an
don't.
interesting situation to where you're, like, having to figure out how do you even, like, live.
Yeah.
Like, what's a productive way to live, Because
Yes.
it's like, that's not a thought I ever had to have.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that never crossed my mind. Like maybe there's things I thought, oh, my parents could do this better or that better, but not like how do you do it at all?
Right.
Wow.
What's the model?
Yeah.
Yes. And so I've been doing that heavily for the first 40 years of my life. So anyway, so I go and I live with my mom and Kenny for a short period of time. And I remember I was like about 16 and a half. And I went to a party at this other high school now that I'm at that has 3,500 kids.
Oh, shit.
So Live Oak was like, my class was like 60 kids, right?
Yeah.
The most trouble we would get into is, go out into the orchards and drink beer.
Yeah.
Now I'm at this big, huge school with 3,500 kids, and I go to a party with some, people from my school and get exposed to like cocaine. And that was like the first time I saw it. And I really hadn't ever seen it before.
Interesting. You had not just given like your mom and stuff that you never like been in front of it,
I mean, there had been other drugs, but
just not that.
Cocaine, I had never tried it, or, I had smoked some weed with Mindy. And,
Yeah.
my mom always assumed that I was on drugs. She would actually blame me. And I guess that's probably just because of her history and what
Sure.
she knows and has seen. She just kind of assumed.
Assumed you're doing drugs.
Yeah. And so I came home. I had done coke, and I just remember instantly I was depressed. Like it just affected my body in a way that I'd get super depressed.
Depressed, like you allowed yourself to do it, or the drug just made you feel depressed?
Yeah, it affected my brain.
Yeah.
Like, I would start crying.
Oh,
And
interesting.
It was very weird. So I went home because I had tried some other white drugs before
Yeah.
a couple of times, and it didn't have that effect on me. It had more affected me like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong.
Yeah. Right.
This affected me, and this is very depressing. Like it would make me mentally depressed.
Interesting.
And I went home and told my mom what had happened, and that I was super depressed. I was crying, and she just basically said, pack your stuff up. You got to move out. And she was, turned into a yelling match. And I was just like, I just needed you for a moment. I just
like
needed
you
to
were
talk
honest.
to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, we've got to figure out a place for her to go. She couldn't handle it. And anyway, I ended up finding, at this time so let me back up about 3 months. I started Yuba City High School, and thank goodness for the teachers there, because they recognized there was a situation, and they got me into an ROTC program. And so I started working at a title and escrow company. And so,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. And it was like,
Interesting that
amazing for
ROTC
me.
and title and escrow. I would have never put those two together.
so ROTC is a program that like puts students in places to work.
Okay.
And it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And this just happened to be a title and escrow company.
Yeah.
And I flourished there, so much so that when this happened with my mom and me being depressed and getting kicked out, I had a part-time job. I'd go there at noon. And because when I was at Live Oak High School, there was one more class. So it was
And did you get
7
paid?
classes. Mm-hmm.
You did? Okay.
And yeah, so I came from 7 classes, so I had more credits than I needed. So I was able to have a free period plus the ROTC. So it was like the last 2 periods of the day.
Yeah.
And then I worked till 5.
Right.
So, so I was able to afford a little place. I found a little place that was like $200 a month.
So in high school, you were paying for your own place.
Yes.
So did you officially become emancipated, or
No.
you just basically were?
Basically, they just said, you need to figure out somewhere to go. And so I did. And I figured it out that week. And they came and saw me, and they brought me a case of beer. And it was like, this is just my life.
How old are you at this time?
17.
Wow.
I think I just turned 17.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that place didn't last very long. It was like on top of a empty building, and bums were like in the hallway and with their
that's crazy
bottles of empty Firebird or whatever it was, Boons. And yeah. But so I had started working for the title company full time, and they didn't ask. I just quit school, so I can afford to live. Mm-hmm. So I just quit school and started. I told them I graduated early, whether they knew that or believed it or what. And they'd give me a company car, and I was.
They gave you a company car?
Yeah, I was flourishing in this position.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so I started.
And you're still 17?
Yeah, I'm like 17.
Maybe 18 now?
No. At 18, I left. I went to Southern California. But I was 17, and they gave me this position. I had been working there for probably 8 months or so. 7 months, and I got my license, and they said, can you go deliver this check down the street? So I went and did that. And then that just turned into, okay, here's another check. Go. And every time I'd go deliver a check while I was there, and this wasn't a concept they had yet for title and escrow.
Okay.
So every time I was there, they'd give me another transaction. Oh, since you're here, because there wasn't even a fax machine yet. We got our first fax machine later that year.
Wow.
While you're here, so I don't have to go, can you take this order? And so we were getting transactions, right?
Yeah.
And the title company, we moved to a bigger building. All this started happening. I got bonuses. And I remember the day the owner, she brought me open to this big ledger book. And she's like, Nicole, this is pre us delivering checks. And this is us now. And I'm like, oh, wow. And she's, they were stunned of this.
Yeah.
And I got poached by another title company who gave me a better car.
Yeah.
And I went to real estate school at Century 21, which I didn't pass. I passed the schooling, but I never went and got my license.
Okay.
And it was about this time that I'm like, nobody's ever said anything to me, but I look back and I know I had some sort of attention deficit. I didn't pass. Every year I had summer school, from a little girl.
Yeah.
And so I think they were just passing me along after summer school because,
just easier.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was in Live Oak as a freshman, the counselor there said, my advice to you is that you find a rich man to marry. And I was like, okay, very nice. So,
wow.
Yeah. These are the little things that I look back on and go, okay, this is too bizarre. And I never
it's
really
a wild story.
Wild. And as an adult, I see how wrong it is. But even then I shrugged everything off and it didn't penetrate me like this was bad.
It's probably harder to look back because now you have the understanding of what your life is what's acceptable, And so looking back, it's probably harder to be like, oh my God, I can't believe the things that were happening to me as an adolescent,
Right. I had a half can of refried beans in my refrigerator most days. So, and didn't even think anything of it, right? I didn't.
You were in survival mode.
Yeah, but I was happy. I just didn't know. Of course, I was disappointed that I didn't have a mom, but I had Mindy, and her parents would, once a year take me on a vacation. And I had a job that really valued me. And so I was really appreciating that time of my life because for the first time, I felt like I had purpose.
Someone wanted you for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing about that was during that, Mindy and she went to Chico State She was 2 years older than me. So she went to Chico State, and on one weekend I went there, and I would go there all the time, to be honest. And we went tubing, and I had the picture blown up into this huge picture and framed and glassed. And I went and dropped it off at the framers, and it was due to be picked up like a day or two later. And the guy goes, yes, I have it. It's at my house. I go there. I'm working. I'm in the company car. And the next thing I know, I wake up a day later. And I didn't dawn on me until recently that I totally was slipped something and given a date rape, something.
Well, that's why I had you come to his house, right?
Yeah, I guess. And it's a small town, so I didn't think anything of it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't really even remember why they were wondering why the company car didn't come back, because I would park it at the... Anyway, I ended up...
So you don't even remember what happened to you?
Oh, no.
You just know by deduction.
I just know I woke up and there was a little Indian girl there waking me up going, you need to leave. You really need to leave. And I don't even think I knew it was the next day. But now looking back...
Who was little Indian girl?
She wasn't little. She was like 30 or something.
Okay.
Probably realizing what happened, going, get the heck out of here, right? And so I left.
In that moment, did you have any idea what had happened to you? Or were you just like still in your survival?
I'm like, what in the heck? No, all these things. That was not the first time when I look back. That happened 3 times to me at different occasions, like over a period of time. And again, Cody, I would not process stuff. Well,
even now, you just like breeze through it as if like I got pulled over, like
Yes.
It's just like this, like, oh, it happens to everyone, like, but it's like that's not what it is.
Yeah. And speaking of getting pulled over, when I had just got my license, I did like a California stop, and I did get pulled over, and I got a ticket for not stopping. And this was after, my mom told me I needed to go find another place to live.
Yeah.
So I went to the courthouse and tried to take care of the ticket. I was working, and they said, your mom has to come with you to take care of this ticket. And she wouldn't go with me. She wanted nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And so I just ignored it, right? And it turned into a warrant.
Of course.
But that was addressed like maybe a year and a half later. So while I was working, I ended up meeting a guy. We moved in together.
Hold on one second. So to go back to, you wake up at that person's house, and then you just go back to work and just live your life?
Yeah. I just went back to work and lived my life. Exactly what happened.
Never spoke to that framer person or like asked him what happened? You just...
Nope. I could take you back to the house right now. I could take you to his shop. I doubt he's there, but yeah, no, never addressed it again until like within the last 5 years, it came back to my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you really just removed it from your thoughts.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of stuff.
Wow.
So I was living, these are just really little quirks I have to share. So I was living with a guy. First time I like moved in with the guy, I think I was, still a little over 17. And it was a train wreck. It didn't last very long. And he was very abusive.
Well, and you'd never, like no one had ever modeled a healthy relationship for you, right? So you don't even know what that looks like.
Right.
Other than Mindy's parents, maybe.
You're right. I thought it just looked like stability,
Yeah.
but it was anything but. I mean, he literally, like one time he tied me up with a phone cord and locked me into a room and went to work. And
oh my God.
yeah,
Nicole.
somebody had caught wind of it. So my friend Angie, she's from Live Oak. She's my friend Mindy's friend. Like, we all went to Live Oak. She had known, this guy's name is Tracy. She kind of had caught wind of some of it. I shared with her what's going on. And her grandma, Angie's grandma, had her bring me to her house. And she said, you're going to come live with me. You're moving in. You're going to stay in this room. And that's just it. That's the end of it. You're not, and I was so grateful, right?
Yeah, finally someone was like, let me protect you.
Yeah, yeah. And she was the neatest lady. Her name was Juanita, and she loved to go gamble. She owned rest homes around town. And she was pretty wealthy. Like, she bought Angie and Angie's cousins all brand new cars, and they were like on the front of the newspaper kind of thing.
Wow.
And so she would sometimes wake me up at like 1 a.m. and say, we're going to were going to Reno, and she would get up. She'd spend probably 15, 20 grand like at a slot machine, and then we'd come home. It was wild.
I never understood those people who play so much money in slots, you know?
Me either.
Because it's like it's so out of your control.
And that's back when like the good old days, actually, when the coins would come in and your hands were all black and, not tickets. Anyway, she won a car in a poker game in town, and she gave it to me. It was a brown Mercedes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It was the cutest little car. And Mindy and I called it the Singer because it like ran like a sewing machine, like the Singer sewing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was wild. So I still have that warrant, right?
Yeah.
And her best friend was a police officer. So it was a short little white smoking grandma. And her best friend, who's a police officer, he's black. They were just quite the duo. And I would go to, they would be at the house all the time.
Yeah.
And he says, Nicole, I guess he tells Juanita that Nicole has a warrant out for her arrest. And she ran a stop sign and hasn't taken care of it. And so one day I come home from work and she goes, we have company coming. And she had called Mindy's mom and dad. And she goes, and they had arranged for them to come pick me up and take me to the police station and check me in and clear the warrant. And it was
because your mom wouldn't, obviously.
Yeah, my mom wouldn't. And Juanita, like, she has comments, she just wanted me to take care of it.
Yeah.
And she trusted them. And so they, like, even my friend Mindy didn't know about this till years later, that they had come pick me up and they took me down to the police station and they sat there while I was booked and released and made sure I went to the court date and just got it taken care of.
Yeah.
So that got cleared. I ended up moving to Southern California. I wasn't really one to stay put.
And how old were you at this time moving to Southern California?
I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. What a life to 18 years old.
My grandma, my grandma and grandpa, but he soon passed, lived in Montebello. And so
This is your mom's parents or your dad's parents?
My dad's.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I moved in with them just temporarily. My dad's brother's wife, my Aunt Yvonne, had said, I'm sure we can get you a job. Come down. So I went there and she had lined me up a job with a lender at a mortgage company. And within like 2 weeks, I was going down La Brea in this little chocolate Mercedes. And I'm coming down, right, like this.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't see the stoplight. And so I literally was just driving, trying to find like an address.
Yeah.
And I ran the stoplight and I hit a cop car, totally like jackhammered him. And I had just moved there. So my trunk was full of like clothes, and it happened to be like my bras and my underwear, and everything was strewn throughout the entire like intersection, all my clothes.
Oh my God.
And I got out of the car and I went over to the police car, just like, oh my goodness, what did I do now? Right.
Yeah.
And my car's not looking so good. And he was like in the passenger seat. And so he didn't have his seatbelt on. Right. Of course I was freaking out, like that I hurt him. And we went to the hospital, and I insisted that they let me go because I didn't have insurance or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I just was like, I'm fine. I'm checking myself out. And not too long from then, I got like summons to court because, of course, I guess he was off for like 6 months. And so they're suing me, right?
Oh,
and I don't have anything.
The police department suing you.
Yeah. So I don't have anything for them to like sue me over, right?
Yeah.
And I finally just showed up to court, and I'm like, I'm not going to be my own attorney. He didn't have his seatbelt on. Maybe he wouldn't have, incurred these injuries otherwise. And they just dismissed the whole thing.
Wow.
It was wild. Yeah. But that was another rough time in Southern California.
Did you lose your car then, obviously?
Yeah, it like damaged beyond the amount of money that I could, And so I took a job as a nanny in Huntington Beach and Seal Beach, another sexual predator as a dad. That ended badly. And then,
oh man.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of like speed up because the good stuff has yet to come.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So I did get into like, just my life just was not progressing the way that I wanted it to. And at this point, I have like the car of the parents that I'm like
nanning for.
Nanning for.
Is this a sexual predator family or a different one?
That's that one.
Okay.
He owned title and escrow companies, and yeah, he would like one day I woke up and he was standing over me naked saying like, while you're down there. And of course, nothing ever happened, but he would do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And totally gross. He'd watch me in the shower. I mean, that didn't last very long and I made my exit, but I had bought a scooter at that point, like a Vespa.
Yeah.
And I remember I had met a guy and we were together. I ended up getting pregnant, and this is all within like a month. And I told him, and, he literally he beat me up, kicked me with his steel toe boots, and said, here's $300. If it's not aborted, go take care of it. And I literally
God.
got on a Greyhound bus and went back to Yuba City. And I remember I was really broken and I was pregnant. And I took this bus back to Yuba City, and I went and saw my mom, or I went to my grandma's. My mom's mom had since then moved around my mom, and my brother was living with my grandma because my brother could no longer live with my stepmom who kicked me out.
So your dad stayed at Donna that whole time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my brother and Donna didn't get along. So my brother was living with my grandma, and he was in high school at the time. And I remember showing up, and she called my mom over, and my mom said, if you have this baby, I will never talk to you again. It wasn't like she ever really talked to me anyways. Sure. But so I went 9 months living with somebody from the church that I went to back when my mom and dad were married. My like within the first 5 years of my life, had heard that I was in town and that I was pregnant and I was homeless. And so the church took me in, and I was living with different people from the church.
Jeez.
Like every month I would go to a different house. Yeah. And one of the families early on wanted to adopt the baby, and I was all for it. Like I just needed the baby to have like a, stable parents. And so, about 5 or 6 months in, I realized there's no way I can give up my baby. Right. And, I'd started like getting a clear head, and, through the pregnancy, I was going to church every Sunday and just like crying and like cleansing and, and I was surrounded by good people, and I realized I can do this. Right. And so, one Sunday morning, I was probably like almost 8 months pregnant, huge, doing my normal routine, like crying away my, and it felt good. But this Sunday, the pastor came up, and the congregation's like 300 people.
What was the religion?
So it was Christian.
Okay.
Yeah. I was raised Christian. Not that we went to church a lot, but in my first,
Yeah.
And so the pastor had come up, and like the 300 members had congregated. Before they congregated out, he asked me if I'd stay. So everybody filed out, and I'm sitting, close to the front, and he asked me to turn around, and he introduced me to my biological dad. And I was like, no, my dad lives down the street. That's not my dad. And he said, no, that's your biological dad. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was him.
You had no idea at this.
No idea. And so it was him, my Judy, his wife, and then his 2 daughters and son, Daniel, Ruth, and Esther. And so, yeah, he comes up and he shows me my birth certificate with a picture of me. And my name was Grimes on the birth certificate, which is his last name. And I was so shocked, right?
Yeah, I mean,
that blew my mind. And so then I was like, okay, that is so weird. And he said, let's have, if you're okay, let's have lunch next week. And so we ended up having lunch, and he knew I was like kind of, I was homeless. I was living with people.
Yeah.
that would take me in. And
How did he find you at that point?
he went to that church. All my life, we were going to the same church. So
Wow.
so when my mom had me, she had met my dad,
Yeah.
the one that I think is my dad. I still call him my dad. She met my dad and they got married, and they asked Steve to just, let them raise me as theirs. And I was a baby. So, but they all went to church at the same church. I guess my mom and dad moved and went to a different church and then maybe stopped going to church. I don't know. But I do remember in Sunday school once, two girls go, you know how we always call you our cousins? Well, you really are our cousins. And, I still, until I was adult, I never put it together.
Yeah.
And so that was my biological dad's
Wow.
sister's kids. So I had cousins that they're all in the same city my whole life,
Wow.
and they'd say, I had lunch with Steve that next week and he said, yeah, I'd see you out and about. And it was really hard to not say something. We would be
Oh my
right
goodness.
behind you at the store checking out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. So, yeah.
Do you still have a relationship with Steve?
Yeah. Well,
How was that for him emotionally, knowing the turmoil you went through?
yeah, I think it was hard. I didn't realize that it was until recently because he just passed away, and his wife, Judy, they're great people. She, opened up and said that it took a while for him to get to a place where he could forgive himself.
Yeah, because knowing, if he knew your story, I don't know how much of it he did, but if you did, it would be heartbreaking to know
Yeah.
that he could have just raised you and that none of that would have happened.
Yeah. And I think it helped because I'm sure it helped that he was able to be there when I was pregnant. And so, yeah. So I had lunch with Steve and he's like, well, we would really love for you to come see us in Browns Valley, which is a 40-minute drive. And, stay the weekend and you can get to know, your half brother and sisters.
Yeah.
And so I did that. And it was a wonderful experience. It was a little heavy for me because they were really into church and they would have to wake up at 6 a.m. and read the Bible for an hour. And there was the whole,
Sure.
and I wasn't used to that. And
Yeah.
so it was, but they were such great people that I'm okay, this is the way life, everybody
Yeah,
I looked
sure.
at is okay, is this how normal is?
You're just
Is
trying to
this
find
normal?
that makes sense.
And so, they were so loving and caring. And so I stayed the weekend there. And then 2 weeks later, they showed up with this old Oldsmobile, right? And it has cracks in the windshield, but it ran. And I didn't have a car. And so they gave me a car and they helped me get into a little 1-bedroom apartment right before I gave birth. It was probably 2 weeks before I gave birth. And, so the day I went into labor, Judy, my new stepmom that I'd only known a month, was in the delivery room with me. And it was a wonderful experience. My daughter was born and it was the best day of my life. Yeah, it was fantastic. But I'm not the type of person to stick around long, right? So
Yeah.
she was born and I was accepted into Section 8. And we were in Yuba City at the time, and I moved to a brand new 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in Sacramento. Took the car that, Steve and Judy gave me, and I went there, I liked it. I found a job.
Did you get back into mortgages and stuff, or?
No. So, I did. I applied at a title and escrow company and I was working there. I had the car from Steve and Judy, and apparently because they didn't process it, because I'm on financial assistance through, Section 8 and before that welfare, when I was pregnant.
Yeah.
The state had slapped me with a felony because I had a car, and you're not allowed to have a car if you're getting
All that
subsidy.
support. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that was a whole thing that I had to go through. And in this time, I started using like crystal meth, right? And
Oh my God.
yeah, it wasn't good.
How old was your daughter when you started using that?
Well, I had started using that when I was in LA.
Okay.
And so when I got pregnant, I cleaned up, and that's when I was like, okay, I can do this, and I can. But it wasn't soon after, when I was in Sacramento, that started back up, and it wasn't good. I'll be honest. But it made me feel like I could accomplish things. Like before that, I couldn't finish tasks. I couldn't do things to completion, and I didn't have a lot of confidence, and I wasn't using it to stay up all night or to party. I literally was using it because I felt like I was a productive member of society.
So it was like your Adderall.
Yeah, it seriously was. And I didn't really know what Adderall was then, but
Probably didn't exist at that time.
probably not. I don't, I just, but during this time I had met a gal, and, I'd also met who was eventually going to be my husband. I've only been married once. So Ed came home from Chico State to see his parents. He was married, and his wife had cheated on him, and he was coming home to like figure out and like get a divorce.
Yeah.
And I met him, and we hit it off, and we were dating. And in the same time that was happening, I had met a gal, and she and the professor at the college, who's a chemist, taught her how to make crystal meth, and she taught me how to make crystal meth.
No.
Yeah. So
Holy shit. So it really is a Breaking Bad story.
Yeah. So I learned.
What college professor? What college?
I really don't know. She
Just like
didn't,
a college in the area.
Yeah. And she might have told me, I just don't remember.
Yeah, because the meth.
I was so enamored by like this whole setup, and I was learning everything I could about it.
So you were cooking meth.
I cooked meth, yeah.
Where did you do
2 years.
it at?
Well, we would do it in different places, but once she taught me, I branched out on my own, and I had my own lab in my garage. I was a crystal meth cook. It's wild to think about.
Oh my God. My mind is just so blown. I didn't know any of this, so it's like, I am just along for the ride. That is fucking crazy. How old is your daughter at this time?
She is like 3.5, 4. Yeah.
And when you were cooking meth, were you with your husband?
We were dating.
Dating.
Yeah.
When we were cooking meth, were you doing meth?
Yeah.
And was your husband then doing meth too?
My boyfriend at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was dabbling in it. Like he was drinking. He was a heavy alcoholic at that time. But when he would do this, he kind of like tapered off on the alcohol. And I didn't know that about him. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really ever drink a whole lot. I wasn't like something I was aware of when somebody, my mom was an alcoholic. I just thought that was
how people lived.
Yeah.
So then you're cooking meth, and then were you selling it to drug dealers?
Yeah. Oh, I was
like
selling
in the bulk or?
Well, the whole process of making meth is like a whole nother hour of like, this production. Yeah. I was selling it to like Harley,
gangsters.
I was selling it to different people,
Wow.
like in bulk or in some, just people I knew, some not always in bulk, but.
So are you making really good money then?
I was making good money. It would go as fast as it came. And it wasn't like I had a whole surplus of cash, but I wasn't like, I was actually able to eat.
Yeah.
And, not worry about, but I was still working. I was trying to work,
So you're still doing the title company thing and cooking meth on the side.
Yeah. And ended up, like jobs would come and go, right? You can't have if I didn't wake up and go to work, I'd lose my job. So I worked at the title company, and then I remember my boss brought me in and was like, Nicole, something is going on. You need to figure it out. And when you do, you can come back. And I'm like, okay. And I left and ended up working for Macy's in like the children's department. And so that was my next job, like right away. It was like right across the street from my house. And I was basically just cooking meth so that I could have it to survive. I
because
needed
it's cheaper
it.
to cook your own meth than to buy it.
Yeah. It wasn't
And-
for production, like mostly, but I would sell some so that I can replenish like, my red iodine and black phosphorus and all the things you need to have a lab. And,
Wow.
yeah. But I hated it. I hated myself that I had an addiction, something that had me, right?
Yeah.
And when Ed came into the picture, I just kept saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be on drugs. And for 2 years, we dated for like 4. So, or 3, I guess, before I moved in with him. And so how that went was just, I just was always saying every day I tried quitting. And I ended up quitting when I first met him for about 3 weeks. I remember it like it was amazing, right? But that didn't last too long. But every day I'd say, I want to quit, but I'd wake up and I'd do it again, or I wouldn't be able to get out of bed.
Addiction's crazy like that.
Yeah, it was very hard. I couldn't function without it. And
Did you at this point have any relationship with your daughter's dad?
no,
No. Did you ever speak to him again?
never.
Never. Does he even know you had her?
I don't think so.
Wow.
And so,
So fast forward, you're now living with Ed, so you're done doing
well,
meth?
he's staying with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not. I took I was able to stop for like 3 weeks. He went back to his wife to see if he could make it work, and that was like a low for me.
Sure.
I felt like somebody left me again.
Yeah,
that I
right.
was
Someone
really-
didn't want you again.
And so I was able to kind of quit for a minute, but that didn't work for them, and he wasn't like looking to quit, or he's into self-destruction mode,
Sure.
right? Anyway, yeah, I wanted to quit. I wanted to quit all the time, and him and I tried to make it work, and it was volatile, and it didn't work, and he left and he moved to the Bay Area and ended up getting his life together. And, he's a college graduate. He's really intelligent, and he found a job, and that's where he was. And I'm still over here in Sacramento, eventually homeless because I couldn't keep things together. And my daughter and I were living in this like abandoned,
Oh my
an
God.
abandoned like business office that was all shut down. And I had gotten a job at a title and escrow company again. And so I was working that, and, Taylor was in like Head Start,
Yeah.
and I knew like I had to figure out how I was going to, every day I woke up and I failed at being clean, and I knew
Yeah.
I had to figure it out. And one day I just, in the chaos of all of it, I was at my wit's end. I just didn't know what to do. I did actually go to a rehab, and I asked my mom to take Taylor. And that was devastating for me because she did take Taylor for like 2 nights. And on the 3rd day, she called the rehab and told the rehab to come tell my daughter to come get her kid. I ain't doing this anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so it took.
Well, that just shows what low you were in to give your daughter to her anyways. Obviously you were, you had no other options.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went and got my daughter, and I kept trying to do it on my own. And I went to her teacher, and I told her teacher, I am on drugs. I'm addicted to drugs. I need help. Like I went to the police station, and I told the
Wow.
police, I am on drugs. I need help. And it just gets weirder. And so they did show up to my house, and they wanted to talk to me and find out like how they could help. One man, he was an undercover police officer, showed up and, was like honestly listening. And I told him, I don't know how to do it. Like, I can't get into a
Yeah.
rehab because I have all my teeth. That like, I'm not they don't see me as somebody that,
Yeah, you don't look like a junkie.
yeah. I mean, if they looked close enough, you could tell. But like,
Yeah.
for the most part, I wasn't checking all the boxes. And I remember the social worker just cried when she told me that she couldn't get me a space in a rehab because she knew I wanted it, but she just, like, their hands are tied, right?
Yeah.
There's so many people that need
Right.
this help.
Yeah.
And so this police officer came and I had told people, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not cooking anymore. Don't even come to my house. I'm over it. I'm done, but that didn't stop some people that really wanted
Oh yeah,
it,
because
right?
they're addicts too, right?
Yeah. And this product was like the best you could buy because it was, I was taught by a chemist,
Yeah.
basically. And so I did get word that I was about to be swooped up and taken in and forced to cook for somebody and not.
Oh shit! It's like a gang was gonna come get you and
just this,
like make you be their cook.
Yeah, white like redneck kind of gang, not a like a. It's just when I think of gang, I think of more of like. Yeah, so
country boys were going to come get you and make you cook for them?
I was told this. Whether I believe it or not, I was freaked out. And I had told everybody, just back off. I'm not doing this. I really do want to stop. And everybody knew. I said it over and over. I was miserable. And that police officer came to my house and I explained everything. And he left me his card. And there was a guy, he showed up and he's like, we need to make some more. We need to make a batch. I need you to do this for me. And I didn't want to. I was really trying to figure out, the lights were off in my house. I had no electricity. This apartment that now this is before I moved into the house the abandoned office building. Anyway, so I figured out a way to put myself in a position where, I went to some links to remove myself from that.
Wow.
But I was still real low and there was still drugs around me, right? And so I just remember finding myself like, what am I going to do? And I just got on my hands and knees and I wasn't really like into, I believe there's something out there.
Yeah.
And guiding me and leading me and protecting me. And so I just like got on my hands and knees and I was like, what am I going to do? And I just cried. And it just came to me, call Steve and Judy. And I hadn't talked to them in like a year, right?
Yeah.
I'd left. I called them up. They came and got me and Taylor. We left everything that we had behind. And they took me back to Yuba City and for the next week drove me around to places they thought that I could check myself into. And they had another apartment, like an empty apartment they rented out, but it was vacant then. So they let me stay there while we were trying to figure it out. And that only lasted like 2 weeks. And I was like, what am I going to do? I'm literally like detoxing. They don't know how to handle that. They've never been around anybody that's done drugs before. And I ended up calling Ed. And that was the man that I was dating. And he came and got me. My dad and Judy met me halfway in Sacramento. And then I went with Ed and he let me stay on his couch.
Did you have your daughter with you?
Mm-hmm. I had I never didn't have my daughter. She was on my hip all the time. I know it wasn't so safe looking back, but I never wanted to abandon her. Yeah. And irresponsible as it may have been.
Does your daughter know all this story?
She only has learned some of it.
How old is she now?
30.
Wow. She can know it all now.
So, so I went and Ed took me to his house and in Pleasanton, California, and I slept on his couch for about a month before I could get off. And I remember,
just from the detox.
Yeah. And I remember actually he ended up sleeping on the couch and Taylor and I took his bed. And I remember the first time actually walking around the block and every crack in the cement and just how painful it was. But we went on from there, and within 3 months I was, walking my daughter to school. This was the summer before she started first grade.
Wow.
Or kindergarten. It was kindergarten. And so by the time school started, I was in good enough condition. I'd gained almost 100 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. I ended up walking her to school and getting my life together. I got a job at TJ Maxx, which was in walking distance. he and I were strictly friends, but, we still we had a love for each other.
Sure.
And 9/11 happened, and he just that morning, I was getting ready to take Taylor to school, and he just went to his knees and started crying. And it was he says, I have to have a son. I want to have a child of my own. We ended up getting married and moving to buying a house by November of that year. And
from September to November.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
So we got married and I got pregnant and I had a son.
Wow.
And all that time after that, I was clean from then on. I didn't do drugs again. And it was unbelievable to look back and think, okay, I had pretty much had a drug a problem for 13 years, and I was cooking meth for 2.
Wow. And that is, I only just know you as the successful Nicole now without any of that backstory. So as you're telling the story, I'm thinking how did you ever get out of that to who you are today?
It's wild. It's wild. And I just did the Cliff Notes. There's so much.
Oh, I couldn't
more
imagine.
That is
Yeah. There's 1,000 alleys you could go off into, right?
Yeah. And the fact that I survived, it's crazy, but I did survive. And, when Ed and I got married, we were around normal people, and I got to see, we had our friend, when we bought our house, and it was a new development. So all the other parents were moving there at the same time, right? From other areas. And so we all became friends, and I'm still friends with these people to this day, but I don't think they know how much I learned about being a parent by watching them. I mean, I've said it,
right,
but I don't think they realize to the extent, right? So I had my friend Tanya and Gordon and I would just mimic what they did. Oh, they go on a family trip once a year. And I started doing that with my kids, and it was we're going to do this. Oh, okay, now we're going to do this.
Wow.
I joined the parents club, and well, first when Eddie was in preschool, I joined the preschool and volunteered 1 hour once a week.
Right.
They did a background check, and they let me go. So, that was devastating. And so we got my record sealed. So then I ended up joining the parents club of my daughter's school and becoming the PTA president, and just really doing everything I can to turn my life around.
Yeah.
And wondering, I wouldn't share this story with people, and just wondering if I was fitting in. That's what I always kept wondering. Am I fitting in? Am I normal enough to where nobody will know that I like my history? Because I'm not one of them.
Well, I mean, you did a hell of a job. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So, man, that's probably the craziest story that's been told on this podcast up to this point. I mean, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Kudos to you. I mean, holy hell. Talk about having to break through barriers, and be resilient. That's that's remarkable.
Yeah, it was looking back, I'm how did I even do it? And in being in the midst of it, I just remember every day, just surviving. That's all I could do was survive. I was never thriving. It was a survival from moment to moment. And I will say that now I'm so far past that. And this half of my life is just so unbelievably amazing, and I think,
and you can appreciate it at such a different level, because it's one thing if you had prosperity and all of that your whole life, you can take it for granted a little bit, but going from living in an abandoned office space to the life you have now, it's the appreciation I can't imagine you feel. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome. I ended up, one last note is when Taylor was, I don't know, she was 10. She started cheer. Maybe she was she was 10. She started cheer, and I just was enamored. We were doing Pop Warner cheer, right? And I really got into it. I loved all the things about it. Her coach, I was just oh, I wish I could do that, right? I don't really know anything about cheer, but but I was approached and offered a job at a private gym to be their cheer director. And I was just like, this is so odd, because I looked at that cheer coach like, I wish I could do this, right?
Yeah.
Ended up working there for 7 years, and the owner was a counselor as well. And he counseled all of the leaders once a week, and we had leadership meetings every week, and it transformed my life. Like, I would not, like, even had all that happen, but I didn't have that 7 years of like leadership classes. You would be able to recognize a little glimpse of, okay, something dysfunctional is there for sure.
Wow.
Like it transformed my life.
I mean, it's so important to take that time to have somebody you can work on yourself with, or even just to put that work in yourself. That's one common denominator I found out of 53 episodes of doing this, is all the people who are really like making moves have someone helping them along the way.
Absolutely.
No one's doing it alone.
Right. And you know how many times I wanted to tell Josh, like, you know what you've done for my life?
Yeah.
I mean, I never did, but our mission was to change lives. He wanted to change the lives of his directors so that they could change the lives of the kids in his program. Yeah. I mean, he had 1,400 kids that came through a week.
Oh, shit.
And my program grew in 1 year to 129 athletes, and we traveled 11 months out of the year. And, what he wanted to accomplish, he accomplished for sure. Like,
wow.
Yeah.
Man, that's just the most wild story that I've ever been told. It's like we might have to do a part 2, just like where I feel like we're only just to like that part,
should.
you know? There's like,
as
there's
your
God
producer,
again.
I'm saying yes.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do a part 2. But I can't let you leave without giving us your definition of success.
Wow. Well, I feel like for me, it's just getting up every day and making sure I accomplish something. If it's tiny, that's fine. Just something every day, because it leads into big things, right? If I do something tiny every day over time.
Momentum's amazing.
Yes. I don't know if that's the definition of success, but it's how I've become successful, is just not giving up.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the word success, is I feel like it's in the eyes of the beholder, and it's different, unique for everyone. It's why I like to ask the question, because there's other people who won't resonate with what you said, but someone out there listening may hear that and be like, wow, yeah, just getting up and taking a shower might be successful for me today. And that's okay if that's where it starts, you know? And eventually then you're going to take a shower and get dressed, and maybe you'll go out and you'll take a walk around the block like you did. Like, it all starts somewhere for everyone. So I appreciate your vulnerability and transparency. I mean, that was obviously not an easy story to tell, I'm sure. And to give the people listening and anyone interested that perspective. I think when you can see someone who's been able to do what you've done and understand that background, it really gives people a lot of hope. Because if you can do it with all of the trials and tribulations you had, then anybody really can. Yeah. I think that's pretty incredible.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, and you know, it wasn't hard. It was hard to admit that, especially knowing like I'm not just admitting it to you and talking about it to you. I mean, this is a whole platform.
Right.
And up till this point, I've really have like, there's going to be people out there that are in my life right now that are going to go, what the heck? And I just want to say, like, I'm not that person that I used to be.
But that person made you who you are today.
Yes.
Right? Like,
yes.
Anyone who has a relationship with you today can't know this Nicole without the Nicole that you were, right? And we all have pasts, and they're not all the same. But I think you being willing to share that and the transparency of it, I think it can be nothing but inspiring.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that anyone who doesn't yet know the story will have they'll just be more blown away, because they'll know how amazing you are today and think to themselves, how the hell did she do it? You know, because it really is remarkable.
Well, thank you for thinking so. I appreciate it.
Well, if someone is listening to this and they're like, "Oh my God, I want to know more," or I had a similar childhood, or I'm struggling with drugs currently, and they want to be able to confide in you, is there a way for them to reach out to you? I guess I should ask first if you're willing to help someone if they're listening to this, and like, "Oh my gosh, I can relate so much."
And that's the biggest takeaway for me is I want people to know, because moms have kids that are drug addicts. And they don't know how hard it is to quit. And I tried for 2 years. And some moms are supportive of their kids. But you get to a point as a parent where, you're not going to continue to help them because they continue to go down that path, right? So it automatically causes a divide. But I'm just telling the world, like, quitting is not as easy as you would think it is. And even for those that really want to quit, I bet it's like 10% that are successful.
Wow. Drugs are a scary thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so if they want to connect with you, what's the best way to do it?
Well, you can leave my information in the comments below.
And is that just like your Instagram handle? Would that be the best way? Or do you have a preferred platform for someone to try and reach out to you?
Yeah, you can message me on Instagram, definitely.
Okay, well, if you're listening, I will put those links for Nicole in the show notes. I really think we're going to probably have to do a part 2. Because it was just like, I know there's more to the story yet, and we haven't even got to like what you're doing now, and that in itself is a great episode. So, Nicole, thank you so much for being here and making episode 53 so special.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad it's over.